Today on Behind the Plinth, we have Aaron Sullivan, physiotherapist, and Renae Hay, exercise physiologist. Today, we're going to be throwing out the question to these guys in regards to what the benefits, what we should do, how we should do it as we age gracefully and keeping active. So I'm just going to hand it over to Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people generally tend to have quite a good excuses as to why they don't stay active, time and all that sort of thing. But for my mind, particularly as we age, with retirement and all that sort of thing, I find a lot of people, in full-time work have the time to do it, and then through retirement have sort of these more active social lives, which is great, but you can sort of combine the two, which is what we do here and with our Stronger for Longer program. And then, staying active can still really remain a pretty important thing that needs to keep going throughout life. And think back to when you're a kid in school and stuff, it's just non-stop activity. And you look at how well kids move, and then as we get older, I think the time doesn't necessarily change, or like the availability of time. I think we just get better at it, the excuses of not training, and why we shouldn't move. And I think a big thing for me, and what I see particularly as a physio, is fear of moving. Whether it's the idea of, if I fall over, am I going to hurt myself? Am I going to get stuck on the ground? And that's what I think it's something like 47% of people that fall over a certain age. I think it's over 80 or 75, somewhere around there. 47% of those people that don't get injured stay down. Like they can't get up, which is incredible, because there's sort of no real reason as to why they can't get up, probably other than the fact that they haven't done it in however long and just
absolutely
can't.
That's the thing, there's quite often, it gets to a point where you don't get up and down off the floor quite as much as you used to.
Yeah.
And so you just don't train that ability, and then
Absolutely,
suddenly you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, which I mean, we hear all the time, right? Like, you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
But to me, it's not necessarily like you lose it, it's you kind of forget how to do it for a little while until you start doing it again, and then...
Yeah, and lose that confidence in your ability to do it.
Yeah. Like, we see that a lot here too. With I love getting people to jump, and you see it in their mind, they're like, yeah, I know how to jump, like that's super easy.
Exactly.
And then you put a box in front of them, they go to jump, and the box is like, a couple of inches, which for some people, like, that's a challenge. And you see it in their mind, and there's just like this disconnect of, I can't do that.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I did this.
Yeah.
What's the process now? How do I go about doing this?
Absolutely. And, my background of the sports that I've been in, that sort of thing, sort of lived in that kind of mindset of scared to do it, probably shouldn't do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I love bringing that into the training, and that fear of movement and that sort of thing. Obviously, like, you've got to be safe with it.
Absolutely.
But I think training those sort of grey areas of, this might be a little bit risky, but, risk to reward, like high risk, high reward, as long as that high risk is managed and still safe and all the rest of it, then, the benefit from that is huge.
Absolutely, yes.
We have so many guys jumping now, and like, a year ago, 2 years ago, just would have never. And, they're older, like, one of the guys, in my class, it's like mid-80s, and still jumping like 6 to 8 inches comfortably. Like, that's crazy to me. It's insane.
And it's a great way to train for bone health as well, all that loading and things.
Yeah.
There's only so much we can do with load in a normal movement.
Yeah.
And adding jumps into that.
Absolutely.
That more force production, it's excellent.
Yeah. I think that's another big thing as well. Like, your classic sort of senior type classes, it's hit a balloon and, stand up out of a chair and that sort of thing. And like, you know, we're creatures of doing things, and you know, we come from a background of evolution of rolling around on the ground and twisting and reaching through bushes and walking forever and all that sort of thing. And you know, like, where does hitting a balloon come into that?
Yeah.
So for me, and particularly my style of training, I like to get like real functional training, like proper functional training. You need to push something, you need to pull something, you need to be able to move your center of mass up and down, like get out on the floor, get back up, jump. You need to be able to balance well, and you need to be able to walk well. And you know, if you can manage that and you can keep that going, then you're probably going to stay pretty happy and healthy and
Exactly, yeah.
reduce the amount of injuries.
And it's all about maintaining that independence as we age as well, because we want to be able to do all the things that we used to be able to do well and maintain that independence, and that I think that's excellent to do.
Definitely.
So there was a statistic that currently in Australia 85% of people aged 65 years or older have either one or multiple chronic conditions. So that's the majority of people have a chronic condition that they have to manage in their day-to-day life. So with that comes a lot of separate things. We have heart issues, we have bone and joint issues going on there. So my role as an exercise physiologist will be to sort of manage those conditions, create a plan we can do, work around that to help target your exercise in a way that helps your condition as well as you as an individual as well. So with things like cardiovascular risk factors, we have high blood pressure and things like that. Exercise is great for managing that sort of condition. We also have osteoporosis, so as we talked about, that bone loading, and helping create nice healthy joints through that with osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. Sarcopenia is also another thing that occurs, so that's the decline in muscle mass as we age. So obviously we want to be able to maintain that and build upon that, which we can do with exercise. And so being able to build that helps with our functional ability and being able to maintain our independence and doing all the things that we do in day-to-day life.
Do you find with like the blood pressures and the osteopenias and that sort of thing, people sort of get into a mindset that they need to be really careful with those sort of conditions, and so almost avoid exercise a little bit?
Yeah, sometimes there is that sort of fear that, I have this condition, maybe I shouldn't be doing anything that raises my heart rate or that could affect it. But in actual fact, a lot of the times that's what we need to do to help those sort of conditions.
Yeah, because I probably see that from like the physio side of things, particularly the osteopenia.
Yeah.
You know, somebody comes in, they're like, I've broken this before, so I can't. And like my mind goes back to exactly what you just said, and it's like, well, you probably should, because that's why it's happening. Like,
exactly.
You're not doing it.
Yeah.
So if we do it, it might get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes in to training at a level that's appropriate for yourself, and then we progress from there.
Yeah.
And work towards all sorts of things that we can do. The sky's the limit, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, with sort of more chronic conditions and that sort of thing as well, obviously another really big thing with aging is cognitive decline. You know, we see it a lot, and yes, there's the Alzheimer's, dementia and that sort of thing, which I think is a little bit separate to a lot of the things that we might be talking about in terms of exercise, because, you know, that sort of then brings in other considerations as well. But for like a general healthy sort of population, the exercise can be really super important for neuroplasticity and like your brain's ability to sort of bounce back and get better and that sort of thing. And I think there's a good amount of research coming out at the moment to say that exercise, particularly with multiple components to it, so like, you know, if you're doing a squat, you know, you're not just doing a squat, you're doing some other task with your hands, and you're taking your mind off the actual stand up and down and concentrating on something else and spreading the mind over a number of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I think doing things like that become really important as well, because, you know, back on like the falls and that sort of thing, it's a lot of like, the brain isn't really aware of what else is going on around it. So when you start training that sort of thing, you get that better and, you know, those sort of other sort of side benefits of less falls and that sort of thing.
Exactly, because when you're training balance, you're focusing on, okay, I need to balance right now. But in your day-to-day, you're not thinking constantly, okay, we need to work on balance as you're walking.
Yeah, well, and that's it. Like, you know, if I think there's a big number or a big indicator of falling is that fear of falling. So if like, you know, I think there's an old saying in sort of pilots flying is, don't look at the mountain because you'll probably fly into the mountain. Like, and it's the same with falls. You know, if you're thinking about falling, you're going to do something to make that happen eventually.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can get the mind off it and not really have to think about it at all and not have that worry, then, you know, you're less likely for that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so that's where that cognitive sort of training in with exercise can be massive, to really sort of supplement, you know, your other sort of chronic conditions.
And it also helps with your mood and depression, anxiety, all the sorts of things that come into play as well. So it's not just physical, it's mental as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, yeah, with moving, obviously, pain is a big limiter on people moving and not moving, and yeah, having a willingness to move. You see that a lot, and from a physio point of view, our main objective is to get people out of pain, essentially, and coping with pain and how to manage it best and that sort of thing. And I think there's things that people don't really realise enough as you age. There's changes in the body and that sort of thing. And you know, I had somebody come in the other day who had knee pain, had hip pain, was starting to develop back pain and that sort of thing. And you know, scan the whole body, and yes, there's arthritis and that sort of thing naturally, which at their age, I think they were sort of 65 plus. You know, like, you're going to have arthritis. Like, that's a part of life.
Yes.
Whether that is actually causing that pain or not, you know, hard to say. And so we dived in and had a look at each section, and we sort of kept coming down the chain a little bit further, got to the feet, and the feet were just like planks of wood. Yeah. Like, wouldn't move, skin was tight, you know, really sort of not a lot of cushioning on the heels and that sort of thing. And you know, we see that, and we know that over age, your fat stores in certain areas become less, particularly in the feet. You know, you do become more stiff, particularly in the feet, and a lot of that does come down to skin. Like, you know, how many people do you know that are sort of 40 plus and starting to get cracked heels and that sort of thing? And that side, from my point of view, and from a physio point of view, that, you know, that affects how that tightness in the skin affects how your feet move. And you know, if your feet are tight, then there's less sort of cushioning to be absorbed. So then the knee then cops all of that impact, and then the hip cops all of that impact,
and then your back,
and then the back, exactly.
And then it's just a whole process.
Yeah, and this snowball effect of why I don't want to exercise, because my feet aren't moving. So when I go for a walk, it aggravates my knee, my hip, my back, and then it's just that sort of ongoing chain of events. So we got their feet moving, and we did all that, and got their ankles sort of moving a bit better. And yeah, like the next session they come in and things are starting to feel a bit better. And you know, this person had other sort of chronic conditions as well, and weight is a big one, and we see that a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't move enough to lose the weight, but needs to lose the weight because of, you know, whether it's osteoarthritis in the knees or whatever it is, and offloading that weight's going to help a lot. You know, like things like 1 kilo of body weight is about 4 kilos of force through the knees, sort of things. You know, losing 5 kilos can be huge for somebody. but getting that movement happening first is massive. And I think that's where we work really well together. Because like I can sort of get a little couple of things moving, whether it's through some manipulations and that sort of thing, and then, you know, feed across to you guys for that exercise.
Yeah, exactly. And then we would start with more smaller sort of movements and get the body moving and used to the movements that we're used to, like some sit to stands or something like that. Ease into it, and then we can eventually progress on from there and go into more functional movements, adding more weight, more load through certain things, get that person moving, get that person walking, and we can continue on their process through there.
Yeah, because that's a big thing as well, right? If you get somebody moving, if they haven't moved in a certain period of time, like those structures that are important for controlling that movement and absorbing that movement, you know, they go from painful movement to non-painful movement, get really excited and overdo it.
Exactly, yes.
And then now there's another issue with it again. So yeah, like that, I think what you guys do with that gradual progression is super important, and becomes crucial in building that longevity of movement, and not just one big superhero moment of I went for a 5K run and now my knees are killing me again.
Exactly, and now we're back to square one with the knee pain.
Yeah, and then with training, there's still that safety element.
Exactly.
Right, like, you know, we're saying do all these wonderful things and, you know, be brave and that sort of thing, but there is still an underlying risk with exercise, particularly if there's a chronic condition or an underlying risk of injury and that sort of thing. So I think, you know, from a physio point of view, having a quick movement screen or quick sort of functional assessment of what movement's going to be good for you from like a structure and injury point of view can be massive.
Yes.
And I'm sure you guys are the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to get in and see what you can do, what you can't do, what are your limitations, where can we go from there, and sort of get a bit of a guidance for you and yourself, and see where we can continue on with that sort of exercise.
Yeah.
But it's definitely important to come in, and if you're having doubts or if you just want a bit more extra guidance, to come and see someone professionally, even your GP to begin with, and go from there. And
I think that's also it as well. Like the guidance is, you know, we don't always have to do the exercise. Like if you just want more information and want to learn a little bit more about, like, I feel as though that's our role more than anything, is just educate.
Yeah, exactly. Just educate on what you have. How can we help you? What can exercise do for you? It's just a major part of our jobs, absolutely.
So, you know, coming in, getting those quick screens or having those quick chats about what is safe and that sort of thing. But then, you know, with them, yes, it's safe, let's go for it. There's a lot of services out there now that do tailor towards sort of more older populations as well. And even something as simple as like your care plans through your doctor, and get the subsidies and that sort of thing to get your 5 visits for your allied health.
Exactly.
That can be a great start in getting that ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Using those 5 sessions to get the most out of what you can with education-wise, and where you should go about your next progressions, and going from there.
Yeah, and then, you know, that I particularly try and you know, guide people towards and exploring options outside of that as well. Once, you know, that process has begun, you know, obviously we always try and advocate for activity and continuing that. And there's services for that as well. You know, like we do the classes, and they're pretty cheap considering. And, you know, they're great socials and all that sort of stuff. And I feel as though there's a lot of places out there within people's sort of close vicinity that offer that.
Absolutely.
It is just a matter of you know, asking those questions and finding who offers that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess we're just here to help, and if that's what you're looking for, we're always available.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if there is anything that you want to talk about, hit us up on the show socials. You know, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. You know, and if you're not on any of them and somehow you've come across this, and call us up or come in for a chat. You know, I know we're both always super happy to talk to whoever.
Absolutely. Always up for a good chat.
Always. Sometimes a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.